guys, it's Miss Binion, and I'm going to be doing progressivism, a flip video for you guys since I'm out today. One of the big things you need to think of is what were the effects of progressivism in the national government in the early 1900s. And here's Teddy Roosevelt right here, and we're going to do a lot of political cartoons. This is a really big era for political cartoons. Thomas Nast is still around, this was all in your book. So just run down on this real quick. Political parties were very corrupt. We already know that, but some of the progressive reforms that happened. Where the big ones to know were the secret ballot, the direct primary, where you nominate candidates instead of them just being appointed. The initiative gave people the right to propose laws. Referendum is a vote yes or no on a bill. A recall, where you can call for a re-election on a elected official who's not doing a good job. The 17th Amendment was the direct election of senators, and then women's suffrage was the 19th Amendment. So a lot of political reforms happening during the progressive era. Some other things going on is the temperance movement. We have the Women's Christian Temperance Union. So if you remember, women were the leaders of the temperance movement in the late 1800s. And then we have the 18th Amendment, which occurs right before the 19th Amendment, and the Mann Act, which made it illegal to bring women into the U.S. or across state lines for immoral purposes. So basically a prostitution law. We also have the social gospel. Please don't confuse that with the gospel of wealth. The gospel of wealth was written by Andrew Carnegie, and it was about the rich giving back to, having a duty to give back to the poor. And the social gospel movement is different. It's people have a social responsibility for others' well-being. This is the beginning of the Salvation Army and the YMCA, and basically like helping people in poverty. Some important progressive leaders, your book highlighted them, so I just wanted to go over them one more time. U.S. Representative and U.S. Senator was Robert M. La Follette. This is one of the first progressive states, and people sort of, it like took the lead and people started following it. And it was, like I said, a model for progressive reform. And they're one of the first to do, have women's suffrage, one of the first to implement the political reforms, the initiative, the referendum, the recall. Cool. Okay, so we were going to talk about the 3 progressive presidents in the slideshow. Those are the big things. So I love these political cartoons. So try to think about, look at this one and think about what act is this discussing. And I'm remembering that like they always show Teddy Roosevelt wearing this outfit, his Spanish-American War outfit. And like obviously here he's wrestling the railroad system. This is one of the most important ones that I'm going to show you, and it's about him saying that there's bad trust and good trust. Okay, so we already know a little bit about Teddy Roosevelt, so I'm going to go through those real quick. He's the first reform president. They call him the first progressive president. Now, in your reading, it talked about the square deal. The best way to remember the square deal, and the square deal is really important. I don't think your book did it justice. So we're going to go through that real quick, and I want you to make sure that if you haven't taken notes up to here, because you already have them in your notes from your book, this is where you need to take your notes. So the first C is to control corporations. Roosevelt attacked big business, but he thought that there was good business and bad business. So they called him trust buster. So this is the important political cartoon I was talking about that shows that he thinks there's bad trust, and then he also thinks there's good trust. And then I also want you to think about why would they have bears as the people, or not the people, bears as the trusts. We also know like he took on the railroads with the Elkins Act and the Hepburn Act that created fair pricing and interstate commerce regulations. He's also the first president to mediate between owners and laborers in the anthracite coal miners strike. So like a president never before had sort of got in the middle of a dispute with workers. And you can see over here he's carrying his big stick. Speak softly and carry a big stick. Okay, the second was consumer protection, and basically he wanted to make sure that unchecked business was going checked. Okay, so like this is a article about a mom and that was eating at McDonald's, and this was in the 90s, and she was about to eat a chicken head, and it just kind of represents like how disgusting the food was. So in class we'll read Parts of the Jungle, and I think you read about that a little bit in your book, and it just kind of exposes how bad things were. People back then were just basically eating and drinking and using medicine that was not regulated. And here's a good example is all of these things I'm about to show you are cocaine. And obviously it's like old cocaine, so it's not like the chemically processed cocaine of today, but it still is cocaine. So here they used it for hair dressing that kills dandruff. Then they used cocaine tablets, and these look like what are those mints called? Altoids. Basically, just going to pop a cocaine mint. These are cocaine toothache drops. Really, people just used them and didn't realize that they were just getting high and their symptoms went away. So it just was confusing for them. This is what they used to use for cough syrup. So if you look down here, it's 46% alcohol and has opium in it. And this was like cough syrup. And the instructions on the back say, for a 5-day-old, give 5 drops. For a 2-week-old, give 8 drops. For a 5-year-old, 25 drops. You would give your 5-day-old 5 drops of alcohol and opium to make them stop crying, I guess. And then this is a pharmaceutical ad for a cough medicine. We have aspirin, lysitol, and what? Heroin? Yes, they used heroin for cough syrup. And so none of this stuff was regulated, and they didn't really realize what they were selling or what they were taking. So after Upton Sinclair exposed the meatpacking industry and the muckrakers were basically exposing all this, the Pure Food and Drug Act came through, the Meat Inspection Act, and the Food and Drug Administration all came through during that time. And that's the second C. The third C was the conservation of natural resources, where Teddy Roosevelt set aside lots of land for national parks. Now, the land had already been, a lot of land had already been set aside in the late 1800s, and we've already talked about that a little bit. But Teddy Roosevelt was very important with that. And this is him riding a moose in 1900. And later on, when we talk about the Bull Moose Party, that'll make more sense. Okay, so these are the national parks and forests. Obviously, you can see they have the dates on here. So he didn't do all of them, but he did set aside land to expand the national forest and parks. And so did William Howard Taft. Okay, so William Howard Taft came after Teddy Roosevelt left office, and basically, I'll look at all these political cartoons. They're basically saying that Taft is mimicking Roosevelt, and here's like Roosevelt riding into his third term on Taft, and Teddy had a little lamb, and this is William Howard Taft trying to wear whose clothes? Yes, Teddy Roosevelt's clothes. Okay, and this is like one of my favorite ones right here, where Taft and Roosevelt had a baby, except it looks like Roosevelt. It's got his little glasses, and it says "My Policy." And then you can see he's got his military back there with his stick. Okay, so what about Taft? He had a lot of progressive reforms, but overall he was more conservative than Teddy Roosevelt. But really, his big reforms came with trust busting. He didn't distinguish between good and bad trust, and this is really going to make Teddy Roosevelt mad, which was also in your book, and so this is going to cause a rift in the Republican Party, which is going to split the party, and they're going to lose the election of 1912. So TR was upset. He spoke out against Taft. I don't know why, but this one makes me laugh a whole lot, because Taft is like ready to go, like they're about to fight, and Taft's around the corner. I don't know. Roosevelt has a brick. It's funny. And so in your reading, it didn't really talk about this that much, but like Teddy Roosevelt started his own party, the Progressive Party, and that split the Republican Party. So you had conservatives and you had Progressive Party, and they also called the Progressive Party the Bull Moose Party because of Teddy Roosevelt. When Teddy Roosevelt was campaigning during this time, he got shot, and you can see like it went through his someone tried to shoot him, and it went through his eyeglass case, and it also went through the paper, and like, but yeah, he was fine. So he kept reading his speech because it's Teddy Roosevelt. So this splits the Republican vote. So the Democrat Wilson wins. So you can see that like the popular vote is pretty close, but the electoral vote is devastating to the Republican Party because it was split. But even if they had had like this 88 plus 8, I mean, Woodrow Wilson still won 435 electoral votes. So the Democrats were going to win. And you're going to see this over and over again. Like it's going to flip back and forth, Republican, Democrat, all throughout the 20th century. And Woodrow Wilson, remember, will be the second Democrat since the Civil War and the first Southerner since the Civil War. All right, and Woodrow Wilson, basically his New Freedom Progressive program continued progressive reforms, and that was it was basically economics. So trust regulation, tariff revisions, And like we talked about in class, he was a very good president. The Federal Reserve System he created to control the economy. So each area right here were different Federal Reserves. So ours in Atlanta, and they do things like set the interest rates, they supervise the banks, they regulate things, they print money, and this was supposed to help basically help the economy. So, and the current system had no plan for any times of financial crisis. That's why the whole 1800s was full of panics. And so this was just basically to control the nation's money supply. A big thing about Woodrow Wilson that you need to know is that he did the Clayton Antitrust Act. So what's the difference between the Sherman Antitrust Act and the Clayton Antitrust Act? The Sherman Antitrust Act was what Teddy Roosevelt came up with that kind of left room for like that there was good and bad trust and you can interpret things. But Woodrow Wilson was like, no joke, dude, this is awful. So he said no to trust. And you can see like the trust here is like the gorilla and he's got Lady Liberty. So like we're going to get rid of trust completely. So trusts were no more. Sorry, John D. Rockefeller. Life is hard. All right. So what's the bottom line of the Progressive Era? Basically, post-Reconstruction, the government's role in the affairs of people's everyday lives changed dramatically. So this is the beginning of the government becoming involved with people's lives. We're going to end laissez-faire. We're going to help people out that need help, and the government is going to be responsible for that. Okay, and so you can see how are these presidents' progressive reforms changing the federal government. You see that the amount of federal employees with each progressive president is going to rise. That means that there's more federal programs to help people. Okay, and we will talk about some of these political cartoons in class on Tuesday. So, all right, hope you guys have a great weekend. Bye.